You know, we like to think of justice as this clean machine.
Right. A logical process.
Yeah, a shiny industrial machine.
Yeah.
You feed in the raw materials, fingerprints, alibis, DNA, whatever, and the gears just turn.
And out pops the truth.
Exactly. It's a comforting idea, isn't it? That if you just gather enough dots, they sort of automatically connect themselves.
It is an incredibly comforting idea. It's also almost entirely a mess.
And that is exactly where we're starting. Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually we cast a pretty wide net, but today we're really laser focused on one single document.
Right.
It's titled Episode 5, When Suspicion Became a Story.
And just to set the stage for you, this document is basically an autopsy, but not of a body. It's an autopsy of that massive, sprawling, panic-induced investigation into the 2001 FBI Anthrax attacks.
Which, I mean, if you were around for that, you remember the vibe. It was terrifying.
It was pure chaos. And this text argues that in the middle of all that chaos, the investigation didn't just malfunction. It actually worked exactly how our human minds are wired to work. And that was the problem.
So what does that mean?
It suggests that investigations don't just gather facts. They inadvertently write fiction.
That's the hook that got me. The idea that an investigation is actually a narrative engine. So today we aren't just looking at who sent the letters. We're looking at how the FBI, the media, and honestly the public, all of us, built this trap out of a story.
And then tried to force a human being to fit inside it. It's really a look at the tension between truth and what the source calls coherence. I think by the end of this, you're going to look at every true crime documentary a little differently.
Okay, so let's get into the gears of this narrative engine. The source kicks off with this really bold claim. It says investigations generate stories, quote, not officially, but inevitably. Now hold on. These are the top tier, right? The FBI.
The pros.
So you're telling me they're just sitting around writing screenplays instead of following the evidence?
Yeah, not consciously, no. They aren't trying to write fiction. Yeah. But the source digs into the cognitive science of it. It says, because humans need coherence, you have to put yourself back in the headspace of late 2001.
Right. 9/11 had just happened. The world felt like it was breaking apart, and then suddenly letters with white powder start showing up.
At media outlets, Senate offices, people are dying. It was terror, randomness, and absolute chaos. And the human brain is it's allergic to randomness.
Allergic. That's a good way to put it.
Biologically, we see randomness as a threat. We can't handle the idea that bad things just happen without a pattern. So when investigators are looking at this pile of disconnected leads, thousands of tips, weird coincidences, dead ends, their brains are biologically wired to bridge those gaps.
It's like when you look at clouds, right? You don't see random puffs of water vapor.
No, you see a dragon.
See a dragon or a face, yeah.
Precisely. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia. We force patterns onto noise because recognizing a pattern, historically, gave our ancestors a survival advantage. The source calls this the addiction to coherence. A story, even a wrong one, feels safer than a pile of unrelated facts.
So if you can tell a story about who did it and why,
You feel like you're back in control.
and the investigation itself, just by functioning, starts to bind this structure, needs a beginning, a middle, an end.
And it needs a villain. You can't have a story without a protagonist, or in this case, an antagonist. And that brings us to the second phase the document describes. This is where the rubber really meets the road.
Okay.
It's about how a suspect gets chosen.
And it uses this really interesting phrase, attention clusters.
Clusters. It's such a passive word, isn't it? Like it just happens. It suggests the kind of gravitation. And the source makes this critical distinction that I think we often miss. It says this clustering isn't based on proof.
Then what's it based on?
It's based on familiarity.
Okay, that's terrifying. You're telling me they didn't find a smoking gun? They just found a guy who, what? Looked the part.
Essentially, yes. In the Anthrax case, they didn't have the weapon. They didn't have DNA, not at first. But the text says they found, quote, a figure investigators recognize and return to.
Recognize.
Think about the archetype of the mad scientist.
Yeah.
Or the loner. Right. If you have 1,000 potential suspects and 999 of them are, boring, regular people, but one of them is eccentric. Maybe he's a bit odd, maybe he has weird hobbies, maybe he's brilliant but difficult to work with.
He stands out, he's familiar because we've all seen that movie before.
Exactly. It's cognitive ease. He fits the casting call. And the source describes this dangerous feedback loop. Once you return to that figure, you start looking at him more than anyone else. You spend your resources there.
Yep.
You ask questions about him. And just by asking those questions, you generate more information about him.
It's the streetlight effect, isn't it? The old joke about the guy looking for his keys under the streetlight.
Not because that's where he lost them.
But because that's where the light is.
That is the perfect analogy. The investigation becomes a spotlight. And if you shine a spotlight on anyone's life bright enough and long enough, you will find things that look odd.
Of course.
But the question is, are you finding evidence of a crime? Or are you just finding the normal debris of a messy human life?
And because you're just staring at this one guy, the cluster of attention gets denser and denser. It looks like a mountain of evidence is piling up, but really it's just a pile of attention.
Which brings us to the amplifier. Because eventually, that spotlight gets too bright to keep inside the bureau. The source moves on to what it calls the media echo.
Okay, so I work in media, so I always get a little defensive when people start screaming fake news, but the source actually takes a pretty nuanced view here, which I appreciate. It doesn't accuse the media of outright lying.
No, it doesn't. He uses a very specific word, selectively.
Not falsely, selectively.
It's the difference between a lie and an edit. The document has this chilling line that really it stopped me in my tracks. It says, details align, contradictions fade.
Contradictions fade. I circled that 3 times in my notes. That's the moment, isn't it? That's the moment the truth gets lost.
The moment complexity is sacrificed for the sake of that coherence we talked about. I mean, think about it. Let's say you're a reporter covering this familiar suspect. You find 10 facts about him. 7 of them make him look guilty. He works late. He has access to a lab. He was rude to a neighbor once.
Okay, but the other 3 make him look innocent. Maybe he volunteers somewhere, or he has an alibi for one of the dates, but it's a little shaky.
Exactly. Now, if you include those 3 innocent facts, your story gets muddy. It confuses the reader, is it him or not? But if you cut those 3 facts, if you just focus on the 7 guilty-sounding ones,
you have a blockbuster. You have a clean, terrifying narrative about a bioterrorist hiding in plain sight.
And the contradictions just fade. They end up on the cutting room floor, the narrative becomes aerodynamic, it flies straight and true, it convinces the public, but it's been stripped of all the nuance that actually reflects reality.
It's like we're polishing a stone. We just rub off all the jagged edges until it's smooth. It looks better, but it's not the same stone anymore.
And in an investigation, an incomplete truth can be just as damaging as a lie. The source is telling us that the narrative is being refined for public consumption. It's being packaged. And the package is labeled guilty.
And this is where the document shifts gears again, and I think this is the most important part. We've been talking about the system, the FBI, the media, this machine, but now we have to talk about the human being caught in those gears. The source calls this section life under focus.
And this is where the empathy has to kick in. We have to strip away the headlines and just imagine what it's actually like to be that familiar figure in the spotlight.
The text says, for the person at the center, life changes. Every action is reinterpreted, every silence examined.
Reinterpreted. That's the key word there. It implies your actions don't even belong to you anymore. They belong to the story.
Can we break that down? Like, what does that actually look like on a Tuesday morning?
Well, imagine you're just a regular person. You're stressed out. Maybe you drop your keys in the parking lot, or you take a different route to work because you want to grab a coffee. In normal life, that's just clumsiness or a caffeine addiction.
Sure. I do weird stuff like that all the time.
But if you're the suspect in a major investigation, the genre of your life has changed. You're not in a comedy anymore, you're in a thriller. So you dropping your keys isn't clumsy, it's signs of nervous cracking.
Oh, wow.
You changing your route to work isn't about coffee, it's evasive maneuvering.
Yeah. It's like a funhouse mirror. No matter what you do, the reflection comes back twisted.
It's a prism that only refracts guilt. The source puts it so devastatingly simply. Context disappears.
That is such a heavy concept. Context disappears.
It means that your actions are no longer viewed within the context of your personality or your habits or your innocent reasons. They are viewed exclusively within the context of the crime.
So if I don't talk to the press, I'm hiding something. I'm stonewalling.
And if you do talk to the press, you're an egomaniac trying to manipulate the investigation. You're seeking attention.
There's no winning move.
There's no winning move. Once the context of your own humanity is stripped away and replaced by the context of the investigation, everything you do can be twisted to fit the plot. The story is like a black hole. It sucks everything in and crushes it. until it fits the narrative.
And the scary part is this is all happening before a single handcuff is slapped on. The story has convicted you before a jury is even selected.
Exactly. And that brings us to the state the document calls the ending. Though, as it points out, it's not really an ending at all, it's a limbo.
What does it say?
The text reads, "By now, suspicion feels solid."
Oof. Feels solid. That's a gut punch. It doesn't say suspicion is proven, it says it feels solid.
And notice the very next line, "even without resolution."
That is the disconnect I really want us to sit with for a second. How can we feel so solid about someone's guilt if there hasn't been a resolution, if there hasn't been a trial or a confession or definitive DNA evidence?
Because the story worked. The narrative engine did its job. We felt the chaos of the attacks. We built a story to explain it. We cast a villain who looked the part, and we edited out all the contradictions that didn't fit. Psychologically, we've achieved cognitive closure.
So we, the public, feel better. We feel like we know who the bad guy is. The tension is gone.
Yes. We've satisfied our biological need for order. We have our villain. But the source is warning us that this feeling of solidity is an illusion. It is a construct of a narrative, not necessarily a construct of evidence.
It's like we've built a house on a foundation of stories, not bricks. It looks like a house, it feels like a house, but if you push on it,
It stands until it doesn't. Or worse, it stands forever, trapping the person inside it, even if they never did anything wrong. The source ends with this cliffhanger that it sums the whole problem up.
it says, next, what happens when a narrative outpaces the evidence?
That's the precipice. When the story moves faster than the facts. When the why and the who are decided before the how is actually proven.
And look, in the context of the 2001 Anthrax case, we know that this had massive, tragic consequences. But reading this document, it doesn't feel like a history lesson. It feels like a warning about right now.
Absolutely. This is a blueprint for the modern information age. I mean, think about how quickly stories form on social media now. It used to take weeks for the media to build a narrative like this. Now,
It takes minutes.
minutes.
Oh, totally. Someone gets accused of something on TikTok, a video goes viral, and suddenly attention clusters.
And context disappears almost instantly. We see a 10-second clip of someone acting poorly in a grocery store, and we write a whole biography for them. We decide they're the villain of the day. We need coherence, so we just fill in the blanks with assumptions.
And the contradictions fade because the algorithm doesn't like nuance. It likes outrage.
Right.
It likes a clean story.
Precisely. We are all investigators now. We're all running our own little narrative engines on our phones. This source document, while it is about a specific FBI case from decades ago, is really a mirror. It's showing us how our own minds work.
And how our institutions sort of cater to that flaw in our thinking is fascinating because it makes you realize that justice isn't just about finding clues, it's about fighting the urge to tell a good story too early.
It is about discipline. The discipline to sit with incoherence, to sit with the chaos and say, I don't know yet, even when that feels deeply uncomfortable. The discipline to look at a familiar suspect and ask yourself, am I looking at them because the evidence leads there or just because they're easy to look at?
And the discipline to look at the media we consume and ask, what contradictions have faded out of this story? What didn't make the cut?
That is the critical question. What has been edited out to make this all make sense?
You know, usually at the end of these deep dives, I feel like I have more answers. But today, I feel like I just have better questions. And maybe that's the point.
I think that is exactly the point. The source isn't giving us the solution to the crime. It's giving us a warning about the process.
So here's where we'll leave you today. We want you to think about the last time you followed a big news story, or a scandal, or even a true crime case online.
When you reach that point where you felt certain, where the suspicion felt solid, ask yourself, was it solid because you saw all the evidence? Or was it solid because the story had finally achieved that perfect coherence?
Did you have the facts, or did you just have a really good script?
It's a terrifying question, but it's one we have to ask.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.